Welcome to our Bucky call for this April 1st or April 2nd, depending on which continent you're on. And this will likely be our last conversation about our book, Grunch of the Giants. So we're going to review the summary. We'll talk about the futures. And I've got a couple ideas brewing, and we're going to share ideas about what we can do in the future. So, Anne, how are you feeling tonight? And what do you expect to get out of tonight's call?
Yeah, thank you very much, Steve. I think I requested actually to see what Bucky thought, in terms of his philosophy and everything 50 years later, right? And so, yes, thank you for doing Grunch of Giants. And well, I got a lot out of it, especially because he's talking about what's happening during the 80s, right? Which is still relevant, very much relevant to today. And then a lot of things he has also evolved with the way he like his principles and everything to fit into the time that just before he passed on. Yeah. So anyway, I'm really, really appreciative of that. And I'd like to see how we're going to close this for today and where we're going to go next week. So thank you. And Joe, yes, how do you feel and what is your takeaway? What would you like to take away?
I feel very fortunate to be here today with everyone. It's great to see everyone. I am really looking forward to this call. Kind of finishing this book is something that I'm going to want to revisit in not too distant future, and to really think about this book in a more. Nope.
Go ahead.
So should I start over?
No,
but,
I think it was already going, and I hit a button and made it talk. So I apologize.
Okay. All right, no problem. So that basically, I'm looking forward to completing this book and going over the main contents, the main points of it with everyone. And I just feel lucky to be here with everybody. So it's great to see everybody. Susan, how are you, my friend? And how do you feel? And what would you like to take away from the day?
I am super glad to have scooted in just in time to catch you all. And I appreciate everybody. I know for many it's super early. Joe, I know for you it's super late. John, I'm not clear. Are you kind of midday?
11 a.m. at the moment.
Oh, delightful. So oh, nice. I am just excited that I think with this work, Bucky is so close to the relevance of our time. I mean, what he's talking about is really an analysis of what we're walking through today. And my hope is that by getting back through it, we're going to get to better application. Han, how are you feeling and what would you like to get today?
I'm feeling great. It's a beautiful time of the year in Perth. It's autumn. We're starting to get some real autumn weather. Autumn started with 36 and 37 degree days, which was not particularly enjoyable, but we're down to 27 degree days, which are much nicer. I've been walking in the park and always enjoy starting Sunday with a walk in the park. And I found the study group really relevant with this book. I feel this book is really connected to what we're experiencing and where we're at the moment. I mean, it was 40 years ago, and Bucky obviously was much more optimistic than realistic at the time, because a lot of things that he forecast should have happened haven't happened. I hope they still will. But there's a lot of insight in what he wrote 40 years ago as to what is happening now and where we're going and whether we're going to make it or not. So I'd like to extract all I can from the Grunch of Giants and then choose something that we're all keen to continue with, because I do enjoy the study group and I do enjoy getting more out of Bucky all the time. So that's how I feel. That's what I'd like to take out of this. And so, Anne, how do you feel and what would you like to take out of today?
I started, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought
yes,
we were just talking. That's all right, yes. Manu, how do you feel and what would you like to take out of today?
I feel good early, and I feel the grunge. The grunge.
Yeah.
You know, there was a famous song that is the grunt. Steve, you should remember that.
I don't know. Which song?
By James Brown, the grunt.
Oh, oh, no, I don't
But
know
I'm
that.
feeling the grunge. But anyway, to be more serious, what I took away last week was design universe is possible. Death is a consequence of finiteness. Learn to let go of some things. And major realignment, I think, was from John, are currently in the world, are currently on, but outcomes are very unpredictable. And the only way that we could, in actual fact, contribute to this meaningfully in a way that is a little bit teleologic is to be comprehensive as we say, try to be as comprehensive as possible. And be, I think patience is something here, because we talked last week about the hot heads of revolution, pushing and being impatient. Whereas there was another way, an alternative way to go about things and try to be able to build the future that we would like to have. So that's what I took away from last week. And I will ask us to actually exchange views of all this, of this journey that we've been through the whole of these past weeks about the Grunch of Giants, and then see how we align or we share better ideas about going forth on our journey of discovery and our journey of creativity and creation. So it was a little bit long and serious, but that's what I expect. Steve, how do you feel? What do you expect?
Well, I'm feeling pretty good. I've driven 9 hours today. I drove 4.5 hours down to St. George, Utah to be with my brother and a bass player, and we played music for about 3 hours. Then I drove back for 4.5 more hours. So I'm having a great day. This reading the Grunch of Giants has been a little bit depressing on one hand, because Bucky's been talking all about the problems that existed in the 60s, and then he's doing this recap summary 20 years later saying, okay, it's just as, you know, we keep using the principles of ephemeralization. We keep making more and more stuff at cheaper and cheaper prices, and corporations keep sucking up the profit. And we're in the same mode today. And we're all broken up into tribes. We're arguing red or blue or Democrat or Republican or this party or that party, and we're all tribalized, and nobody's looking at the real problem. And the real problem is that brass ring. Everybody wants that brass ring. Everybody wants to get rich, and most people I talk to, they want to get rich so they can help people. I know a guy who, you know, he got rich so he could help people, and he went out to go help people. He went on a mission for a church. He had to come back off his mission because his business was falling apart. You know, when I get so engaged in, I need to, and so I'm really hopeful that, oh, and by the way, Joe sent out a link. I don't know how many got it. Joe, who did you send it to? But it was the PBS special on easy money, and talked about, yeah, it's an hour-and-a-half program, I think, or an hour-long program. I listened to it today. Talks about how the crash in 2008, a bunch of problems happened, and how the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank has constantly been making these decisions that have created the problems all along. And so I really believe that Bucky's idea is that each person gets to make these decisions. And I hear what Ann's doing out there. I see my grandkids, and it's very possible that my grandkids could make the system irrelevant to a degree. In other words, I can argue about taxes and whether we should tax the rich or tax the poor or give out food stamps or not. Or I can just go out in my community and make sure everybody's eating, and take local resources and make it happen. And I think that's the solution. The solution is bottom up. It's going to take some education, I would think. I was just listening to Greg Braden talk about this, you know, and it's just about making a choice. And sometimes those choices are hard and sometimes they take faith, but hopefully Bucky's going to inspire me to, as soon as I finish my book, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do next and make the difference. So cool. So I'm looking forward to finishing the book today. And what I'm noticing is that even though I booted my computer brand new for this meeting, when I loaded my File Explorer to search for our reading today, it didn't want to do its job. Let's see if we can get it to do it now. Yes, it's working now. And what we're going to do, we could either do the last couple of pages or we could just do the last page. So let me share screen and you guys give me a vote here on what you want to do. I'm gonna go to these markers and okay, good. I will now summarize. All right, great. I'm finding the share button. Yeah, Joe just put the Age of Easy Money link in the chat. So that's worth watching if you want to see how corrupt the system is, right?
It's actually very, very, it appeared a week ago, not more than a month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's real current. It's talking about the issue in Fed policies in 2008 and how they're continuing now with this quantitative easing stuff. Okay, so look, this is page 55 right there. I will now summarize the last few pages quickly. And so then he goes through this summary of stuff. Here's page 56. And this is where the only happily promising recourse of each human individual is to our highest intellectual, is to our highest intellectual facilities. I could make that bigger because it's even small for me to read. So we can hit there and just go from the bottom of this page to the last page. I think we could read his summary from the previous page. I think we could start there.
Steve,
Yeah.
Steve, I have a suggestion. Could we do that last bit, first, and
Okay.
then go back to the summary, summarize the last few pages, because I think that if we do that list that he's put out there, and then we go back to the last few pages, I think it'll pull everything together.
Okay, good.
It would. I know it would.
Is everybody good with that? Yeah, is everybody good with that?
Yep.
Here we go. If you want to, John, if you want to start there with
Yes,
the
sure.
good.
The only happily promising recourse of each human individual is to our highest intellectual faculties and their mutual, ego-deflated, unselfishly loving preoccupation with comprehensivity and our employment of the most powerful tools of all.
I mean, he's saying right there that each individual, we each have to use our highest faculties with ego-deflated unselfishness. This idea of just going out and make sure, forget about, you vote for taxes, vote for the right system, but then go out and do something today. Any other comments on that? Okay, and I'll try to operate this. Let's read one at a time and see if there's any comments as we go.
So as I understand it, Bucky is saying these are the most powerful tools of all. One, the family of generalized scientific principles governing the operational design of eternally regenerative universe itself.
Good. Now, any comments or questions on that? He's talking about cosmic hierarchies. He's talking about synergetics, right?
Yep.
The operational design of eternally regenerative principles. So he thinks that understanding the universe the way he sees it is what each of us need to do. Any other thoughts on what that means?
Yeah, I because previously I don't think he talked so much as much about regeneration, right? But to hit upon it as number one on his list, in the early 80s, that is something that we're seeing critical today, the regeneration part, so I'm like, it just blows me away, like how he sees things like decades before the critical moments arrive, you know. Yep. So that's my thought on that.
And I love the fact that you focused on the word regenerative,
Hmm.
because so many times I sit in a meeting and people are trying to solve this problem. They don't look at it and say, okay, if we do that, is that solution regenerative? You know,
Mm.
it's like loaning people money or giving them enough money to buy a goat so they can have baby goats that'll have more goats. So that means more wealth. Because remember in the book Grunch of Giants, he talked about real wealth is the ability to grow a garden, the ability to have animals, and the Grunch has converted wealth into their fiat currency, and by doing so have stripped wealth from the people, right? So this idea of regenerative, good point, Ann. Any other comments on that?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
no, I think that it's actually the fact that he's incorporating, you know, comprehensivity and regenerative. These are all the same concept,
Yeah.
in so many different words. And it's right. Unfortunately, we're just putting out fires. We're not necessarily looking at the whole system and how to solve the whole system kind of problem. So, you know, whether it be a bank bailout or whatever it may be, we're not looking at the systemic issues that actually are plaguing people. And, you know, ultimately that's how we have to think about problems and how to really think if we're going to use, you know, resources efficiently and actually get to a point where we're regularly doing more with less. You know, that we have to take a comprehensive approach.
Yeah.
So,
The
Mm.
word
That-
comprehensivity, a lot of people don't even use that word. Ego
Mm.
deflated, unselfishly loving preoccupation with comprehensivity.
and really quickly, that's another way of saying, in a way where we're all cooperating too, and that gets to the other point is that, like the idea of doing this and a basically how people think they have to do it in a violent manner and they don't. They actually just have to think about it differently about how we can work together.
Yeah.
And
I want to
sorry, Manu, go ahead.
What did you
Manu,
say?
go ahead. You
Okay,
go ahead first. Yeah.
okay, thank you. I wanted to say that you can't talk about comprehensivity. The prerequisite for it is to understand cycles. Cycles is so basic. A lot of people, a lot of time, start something and just do one phase. And concurrently, they forget about history or they neglect it. Because there are some cycles that overlap others that are longer. Let's take one example of the money supply in the economies of the world today. This generation had forgotten about the lessons that were supposed to have been taught to humanity 100 years ago, 90 years ago. So if we just live into that and we believe that we can inflate it to death, yes, we will inflate it to death. Because that's certainly what will happen. It is destruction of the system because of the non-anticipation or the non-remembering of the past. Same thing has happened with technology. The young of today with blockchain, for example, they forgot about what happened with the internet. It was forgotten. Everybody rushed into things and forgetting the fundamentals. What is the price-earning ratio of this thing? So if in the new technology, we anticipated that it was the universe is curved, that it was go around and come back to you in a certain way and learn about it. So therefore, it were patience for that. Maybe the outcome that we are seeing today might have been different. So to me, to understand comprehensivity, the first thing is to understand what the cycle is and what cycles are and how do they overlap or how they partially overlap. Therefore, what do you call lag? That was my comment.
Good.
Mm.
Beautiful. Any other comments or questions? Anne?
Yeah, I just want to say that actually, if you really look at number one, I think Bucky just put all of us in our place, exactly who we are, because he talks about the eternally regenerative universe itself. And so the point here is that we're truly insignificant. We talk about the end of the world, but the end of the world to who is only to us and not to the universe, because it will regenerate itself whether we are here or not. So I think the number one just really put us in our place. Yep, that's what I was going to say.
I hope you understand well what he calls universe here.
The known world, yeah, but that's the point, is what we know, right?
Yeah.
So it's so that what we know and what we don't know doesn't matter. It'll just continue on whether we are here or not, because it's eternally regenerative itself, with or without us. All right, that's all what I wanted to say.
Good. Continue, John.
All right.
Number
2, comprehending and effectively employing synergetics, with the books Synergetics and Synergetics 2, presenting the comprehensive, omni-image able mathematical coordinate system employed by nature, thus avoiding the mentally debilitating vast majority of humanity excluding quasi-mathematical coordinate system employed by present-day science.
Comments
I
or
think
questions?
Yeah, the comment, in my opinion, there is, or the most important word is end. Let me explain what I mean. And I quote Confucius: knowledge without practice is useless. Practice without knowledge is dangerous. So here you need to comprehend, but also you need to be willing to effectively employ those principles. So to me, the most important word of that sentence is the end. Comprehend and employ.
Okay. We might go back in the future. We'll hold this to the end, but synergetics, he says, is a solution. So maybe that's worth considering. What is synergetics 2? I've never heard of that.
It's written 2 books on it.
It's talking about it there, presenting the comprehensive omni-image able mathematical coordinate system employed by nature, thus avoiding the mentally debilitating. I'm stealing from John there.
So Synergetics 2 is just another book. It's available like
Yes.
Synergetics, huh? Oh, there you go. I didn't know that. Cool. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions? Okay. John.
3, comprehending the major objectives and operating strategies of the major opposing power structures of world politics, their present status quo, and probable future trending.
Yeah. So he's saying that understanding that information in the PBS special that Joe sent the link out on is probably important. Any other comments, thoughts, or questions?
What does it mean in the context of all what Bucky has been saying fundamentally?
Are you talking about their probable future trending, Manu?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you look, Europe is giving us a very good example at the moment of politics, which is so egocentric. Finland and Sweden applied to join NATO because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Germany, which has been such a pacifist country since the Second World War, has finally been prompted to provide armaments to Ukraine. At the beginning of the war, that would not have been imaginable. But the politics within it, because Hungary and Turkey have some grievances with Sweden, they blocked Sweden's admission to NATO. They have now both agreed to Finland's admission to NATO, and it's highly likely that'll be finalised in the next couple of weeks. But the power politics of ego are prompting Hungary and Turkey to try and extract something from Sweden before they do agree, and it is anticipated they will agree to Sweden being admitted to NATO. So where Putin appears to have been motivated by a desire to leave a great empire and to be remembered as another Peter the Great, what he's done is polarize the rest of the world and prompt countries that would otherwise never have done so to join NATO, and countries that would never have provided arms to anybody else previously to provide arms to the country that he's invading. And it's feeding the egos, it's polarizing. I mean, if that trend continues, we'll have back to the 80s. I mean, Bucky wrote in the 80s about the expenditure on armaments and defense. You know, we had the East and the West, we had the Soviets and the Americans. And I can remember the figures Bucky said in the 80s. The US was spending about 400 billion a year on armaments defense. The Soviets were spending about 400 billion a year on armaments and defense, and the rest of the world was spending about $200 billion a year on armaments and defense. So he said for, I think it was just over a quarter of that $1,000 billion a year, we could have solved most of the world's major problems. You know, clean drinking water for every person in the world, reforestation, a whole lot of other things. He listed them, did a costing on them, and worked out it wasn't much more than a quarter of what we were spending on killingry rather than livingry.
Yeah.
So,
John,
you know,
if just imagine that Bucky would be living today. Okay, what do you think his opinion of what you just say would be?
he'd be disgusted. He'd be disgusted that we haven't learned anything in 40 years. We're going backwards, not forwards. That ego puts civilization at risk.
Yes, so is joining NATO anything that is of interest to us? Other than us being...
It shows the trend. It shows the polarization and countries that wouldn't have done this previously being prompted to do it by the increasing polarization.
Yeah, but I think that Bucky would have stood like some other intellectual. He would have taken a position that is similar to that of Kissinger. People who know, who have studied, who have been actors, and actually who know what is going on. The issue, I think, for us, in terms of the context of our discussion, is much bigger than NATO or Ukraine or anything. And you touched in some of the words of it. He's talking here about the comprehension of issues at the level, at least, of this planet. To Bucky, this spaceship Earth that has, I don't know how many captains it has now, of commanders, small commanders of a ship. I don't know how many there are. Is a big issue, was a big issue. And that is typically what he called type 1. Those are type 1 issues. And type 1 tends to obscure type 2 evolution, but can't. So we have to look at it from that point of view. Things are happening, is very unfortunate. And we are victims. The Ukrainians are victims, like many others have been victims of these things that is going on in the world. And the only way to really satisfactorily tackle those is to learn from history, but most and foremost, to understand what is today, to understand, as you say, I was going to say, awareness. Life started with awareness of the otherness. What is the other side thinking? And really then look at the principle and apply those principles in a way that ensure that regenerative. Otherwise, we'll be talking just in the void. It will pop here, pop there, pop there, and pop there. I mean, if it's not Ukraine today, it's going to be Czech, it's going to be the Congo, tomorrow it's going to be something else. Forces at play are very complex, in my opinion.
Mm.
And you need to really have not the armor, but the intellect of the generalized principle to make any sense of what's going on. And actually to even try to overcome the impulse, the immediate impulse that we might have, and think about what is actual fact in terms of what is going on in the world, the settlement that we require, and what dynamic do we need to converge towards that. And that was big about Bucky. And Bucky thought a lot. That's why he wrote, in my opinion, the Grunch of Giants.
Cool. At the time he wrote this, I remember reading 150 countries, as you said, Manu, and Google tells us now there are 195 countries.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That is the real issue. I mean, that not the real issue. That is one of the features of whatever metaphysical system that is going around. It manifests in our world into that division and into the problems that we have. And those problems are what you call frictions at borders. Frictions at borders can adjust because there's no what you call fairness in the world affairs. There's no fairness.
No fairness.
Yeah.
Other comments or questions? Okay. I moved it down and then I moved it back to make sure we got everything. Here we go. There we go. Okay.
4, comprehending the fundamentals of economics, of wealth versus money, of the principal features and functioning of industry, banking, and securities. Still sadly lacking.
Yeah, and that link that Joe sent out, I mean, it really goes through a history of this banking. But you know what? Never did it say Glass-Steagall. Never did it say that banks in America are enabled. They can buy commodities and speculate. Banks can speculate on commodities. It talks about how the banks use the money and the corporations use the cheap money to buy back their stock and increase their value for the stock.
Right.
Instead of expanding their inventory or creating jobs, they put all the money in their pockets. But you know, it didn't talk at all about. Go ahead, Joe.
No, it's interesting that you say that because it talked about stock buybacks as a way of and that was, and I forget because I was listening to it and I wasn't looking at who was speaking at the time, but they said, oh yeah, that's something that we're concerned about because people or companies are not necessarily looking at ways they can actually invest in the future.
Yeah.
And it's funny that the reason I thought that that's interesting is I think about this in terms of wealth and money, and how corporations are only thinking in terms of money, and essentially how those are actually lagging indicators, which means you're just following, in a sense, of words lead and numbers lag. Then thinking about wealth is creating ideas and investment and putting things into the future, whereas money is something just doing a stock buyback, which is just putting money back in your pocket, as you're basically following numbers as opposed to following ideas, and you're following dollars in something that is actually, and not being able to make the distinction between what wealth is and money is a really important thing to think about.
And in go ahead.
Susan has at least 2 cats, right? The black one and that
They're great.
this one is showing now. I don't know what color is that. Gray.
John's cat was on the screen a while.
Silver and the silver one. Now you can say, Joe, John has got this, but you can say Susan has felines at home. Or you can say Susan has 2 cats. Those 2 equate to cats. You understand what I'm saying?
I don't.
Okay. 2 is
versus
just a number to indicate that there are 2 things there. You counted 1 cat, 2 cats.
Right.
But cats are there, they are alive. That's the same thing as wealth and money. Money is just that too. I could have described the fact that Susan has 2 cats by saying Susan has felines. That feline will comprehend the 2. So if that is the way the word lead and qualify something, and I keep on changing what it means and mixing what it was before to what it is today, what do you think that will happen to the power of that word, that label? It will dilute.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, the
Money
purchasing
has-
power.
Money has nothing to do with wealth.
No.
Mm.
It has nothing.
And in fact, in this Grunch book, we read that Bucky was concerned because the banks loaned money on the farms, which were a source of wealth because they're regenerative, and made loans that couldn't be paid. So then they foreclose and they take the wealth and in exchange for money. They give people money. So they give you a loan on your property, then they take your property if you don't pay back the loan. So,
Yep.
so that's what the do. And listen, that's what hedge funds have done. I'm just so amazed that nobody's talking about how rents increased so quickly after the COVID thing. And I'm convinced the reason why is because hedge funds in America bought tons of property. They were competing against investors, and they have all these shell corporations out there, so you don't know who owns the property, and they just started raising the rents. And there's a limited supply of properties for sale because they bought them all. So people can't buy them, so they got to rent and they jack up the rents, and all of a sudden everybody's jacking up their rents.
Hmm.
So
What would you think, Steve? Will you think about the tape that is elastic?
an elastic what?
Tape that you are using to measure a piece of ground.
Yeah, if I had an elastic tape.
What will you think about you have a tape that addressed at the conditions that we agreed are the conditions? That tape is 1 foot.
Okay.
But the tape is capable if you heat up. Let's say it was something material that changed with temperature. You heat the temperature and the tape can increase to 150 or even 2 feet.
Yeah.
And then you are using that same tape to measure something that's relatively immutable in relationship to the tape.
Yeah.
Say a piece of ground.
Right.
So as you are pulling, somebody is pulling, you still there static. And then you are recording 1 foot, 2 foot, right? At one point you will record 2 foot for 1 foot.
Yeah.
What is that called? A theft
Yeah, it's called thief.
of the party who knows what he's doing and the other one is ignorant.
Do you
So
remember?
inflation in first and foremost a monetary effect, and secondly, it is a theft. And thirdly, people ignore about it. And you should actually understand it from a reverse side, because people are ignorant of this principle and these issues and this global. Those who know, who might even not know, but just experience that doing this because the other guy is not aware of it. I'm stealing from him, but he's not aware.
Right.
I'm still a thief. So you're pulling that stuff and measuring and taking away from that guy, unbeknownst to him.
Right. Wayne Palmer reported a story like that in the last week or two, where a fellow in Africa was going out buying a half a cup of rice or a cup of rice. And he was talking about it and said, well, why don't you go buy a 5-pound bag of rice? Because the cup of rice was way expensive. and they could buy a
Mhm.
5-pound bag of rice and sell it to his friends and family at a lower price. And
Exactly.
come to find out, he wasn't even getting a cup of rice. The guy had a can saying it was a cup, and it wasn't a cup. It was a half a cup or 3/4 of a cup. So not only was he paying a super high price, he wasn't getting, he shrunk the can so that he wasn't selling a cup of rice, even though he represented it. And the buyer, this kid, he didn't know what a cup, he wasn't educated enough to know what a cup was. He didn't know it wasn't a full cup until he bought a bag of rice and started looking at how much he was getting when he got a cup. It's the
But
ignorance
this-
factor.
put this in the context of what Bucky says, Steve.
Yeah.
Bucky says the principle and the method, the anthropic method to go about is to be able to divide fine, but to measure precisely, isn't it? In
Calibration.
that case, you are dividing fine, but you are measuring fake.
Yeah.
To detriment of the other, the counterparty in the transaction. So in other words, you are equating the need of survival of somebody because it cannot afford, say, a liter of, say, for example, that rice, or let's say, here we count in kilograms instead of pounds. Let's just say it was 5 pounds of rice. It can't afford to get 5 pounds of rice. And then you take it, you put in the small receptacles of finer stuff, and you sell it in a way that when it adds what is supposed to have bought 5 pounds of rice, it doesn't have. It only has 3 pounds. What happened? That is inflation.
Mhm.
That is inflation. The inflation there is 2 divided by 5. The difference between what he got 3, it was supposed to have 5. 2 divided by 5 is how much? It's 20% inflation on that transaction. And if the economy is the aggregation of all those things, that is what you call inflation. But it's been turned into something that keep on changing. I don't know how many times, Joe, you know better, they change the basket of goods and the different ways that goes into what you call a CPI.
Right.
And that is in all countries.
Yeah. CPI, Consumer Price Index. Cool. Shall we read the next one?
Okay. So, comprehending the educational system in general, as well as the discovery of the shortcomings of science, engineering, and education in general. Yours, Anne?
Yeah.
Yep. This, I think we've said a lot about this already. So yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Other comments, other questions? Kate, number 6.
Synergetically comprehending what it is all about, as propounded in Critical Path and this book, Grunch of Giants, and discovering what our options are to confront imminent race disaster. And I take that to mean the human race.
Yeah.
Imminent disaster for the human race.
Yeah. Other comments or questions? So not only is Synergetics and Synergetics 2 valuable resources, but Critical Path and Grunch of
Yeah.
Giants, which we're completing. Go ahead.
And if we
No, I
start,
just think, go ahead.
if we started treating it like that humanity was a single race instead of all this nonsense about all the distinctions and the people trying to draw lines of difference between us, things would change rather quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, keep going.
No. I mean, I wasn't going to add anything, but I think that that's an incredibly important point. And we actually talked about it today. There's at the Stoic conference, and they talk about it a lot in Stoicism, is the idea of cosmopolitanism. Not necessarily looking at yourself as a kind of one country, or kind of from a nationalistic perspective, kind of looking at yourself, looking at you know, the whole world as a whole. And so even the idea of what we're talking about, how we're dividing ourselves through like NATO and things like that. Those are, I mean, it's fine that it's great that countries are entering NATO, but it does seem like groups are aligning with one another.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Yeah, taking sides. And Joe, I want to acknowledge you putting this link in because I said that the PBS special didn't mention anything about banks buying commodities and buying houses as a commodity and then competing with the private sector. And Joe put an article in from Wall Street Journal. Housing groups try to counter rental conversations and help lower income residents achieve homeownership because active house flippers take on Wall Street to keep homes from investors.
I'm trying to get the PDF just in case you can't get behind the firewall, but it is an interesting.
Yeah, do it if you can get the PDF because I think I've used my limit on them.
I'll try and do that.
Thank you. Good. Thanks for that contribution, Joe. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, good. Our final point.
Number 7, the big one, God.
Wow.
The individual discovery of God by a vast majority of human individuals, not the discovery of religions, but the discovery that each and every individual has an always instantly open, no intermediary switchboard authority to contend with, no interference of any kind, direct hotline to God. That is the weightless, non-physical communication occurring teleologically between the differentially limited, weightless, non-physical, temporal, special case mind of the individual human and the comprehensively integrated macro-micro unlimited, weightless, eternal, generalized mind of God.
Wow. There's a mouthful.
Yes, and a mindful.
And a mindful.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I'm going to put that in my book. Okay. Any comments or questions on that?
The whole
I-
thing's a question.
Yeah, I've mentioned before that in the John Denver when John Denver hosted an honorarium, a kind of a celebration of Bucky after he passed at his nonprofit endeavor there in Colorado. I think it was called something Star, Twin Star. He showed a video. That video I'll look it up and drop it in the chat. It shows a quote from Bucky talking about God just this way. He said, you know, we've got to start trusting in God. And I don't mean a personal God like you think. I mean the energy that God is, this, and the fact that each one of us have this no intermediary switchboard authority to contend with. We just have a direct hotline to God. Each person does. That is such a powerful concept. Comments, questions?
Yeah, I have
Well,
one. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I have a question because okay, you put it very, very nicely, Steve, in a nutshell there. Like the point is that we all have individual, direct hotline to God, right? Okay, but can anybody maybe put this into perspective for me? Why is this line so powerful at the end of the whole Grunch of Giants?
Yeah. Yeah.
say again, Anne.
How come
Yeah.
this is the last point Bucky makes as his punchline, his bottom line punchline?
Yeah, why is this line his last sentence or last line in his book, The Grunch of Giants? What is he? Because okay, we can all make out what it is that this sentence is saying, but how Bucky's mind, right? How it works, right? So why this last line? Because he makes points, like he just punches it through. Yeah, if anybody can help me with that, I'll be most grateful.
I will point you to two things, Anne.
Mhm.
First thing is that this closes with what the first principle that he has. And the principle, and he build it in terms of principle of the brain and the mind. And the brain is always storing, and the mind is always relating. The mind is metaphysical, right? And he says there are general principles that govern this universe. General principle means it's true everywhere. So we have, and will always be, particular local manifestation of those things. But further, our role, according to Bucky, is that of the local mechanic. You work for the car that is transporting everybody else to be working. But you might choose to work or to sabotage, but the car is too big for you. It will crush you. You understand what I'm trying to say? Our role is to be local receivers, storers, retrievers, and transmitters. Right? And the end of that, I will send you into one of Bucky's. Really is a poem. It's a long poem, actually. I don't know if Steve, you can get it. Ever Thinking the Lord's Prayer. You remember that poem?
Is it from Bucky?
Yep.
I'll-
In
I'll-
a critical path.
Mm.
He calls it
Ever Thinking the Lord's Prayer. We once, I don't know when, we once read this thing. That was probably 5 or 6 years ago. Or I don't know, maybe more. Is page, Steve, you have critical,
I've got it. I found it on the web.
okay, do you have it?
Yeah.
Can you put it up?
Yeah. Let's see this. Let me just back it up and see if
It's for Anne and maybe Joe, because I think that everybody else is aware of that point.
I think this one's an easier one to read. Hang on a second.
Otherwise, page 153 of critical path.
Okay. If you have critical path, open up to 153. And if not, here it is on the web.
Okay.
So John,
Okay.
John,
Yes, ever rethinking the Lord's Prayer. To be satisfactory to science, all definitions must be stated in terms of experience. I define universe as all of humanity's in all known time, consciously apprehended and communicated to self or others' experiences. In using the word God, I am consciously employing 4 clearly differentiated from one another experience-engendered thoughts. Firstly, I mean those experience-engendered thoughts which are predicted upon past successions of unexpected human discoveries of mathematically incisive, physically demonstrable answers to what theretofore had been misassumed to be forever unanswerable cosmic magnitude questions. Wherefore, I now assume it to be scientifically manifest and therefore experientially reasonable that scientifically explainable answers may and probably will eventually be given to all questions as engendered in all human thoughts by the sum total of all human experiences. Wherefore, my first meaning for God is all the experientially explained or explainable answers to all questions of all time. Secondly, I mean the individual's memory of many surprising moments of dawning comprehensions of an interrelated significance to be existent amongst a number of what had previously seemed to be entirely uninterrelated experiences, all of which remembered experiences engender the reasonable assumption of the possible existence of a total comprehension of the integrated significance, the meaning of all experiences. Thirdly, I mean the only intellectually discoverable a priori intellectual integrity indisputably manifest as the only mathematically stateable family of generalized principles, cosmic laws, thus far discovered and codified, and ever physically redemonstrable by scientists, to be not only unfailingly operative, but to be in eternal, interconsiderate, interaccommodative governance of the complex of everyday naked eye experiences, as well as the multi-millions-fold greater range of the only instrumentally explored infra and ultra-tunable micro and macro universe events. Fourthly, I mean all the mystery inherent in all human experience, which as a lifetime ratioed to eternity is individually limited to almost negligible twixt sleepings, glimpses of only a few local experiences of one of the infinite myriads of concurrently and overlappingly operative, sum totally never-ending cosmic scenario serials. With these four meanings, I now directly address God. Our God, since omni-experience is your identity, you have given us overwhelmingly manifest of your complete knowledge, of your complete comprehension, of your complete concern, of your complete coordination, of your complete responsibility, of your complete capability to cope in absolute wisdom and effectiveness with all problems and events, and of your eternally unfailing reliability so to do. Yours, dear God, is the only and complete glory. By glory, I mean the synergetic totality of all physical and metaphysical radiation, and of all physical and metaphysical gravity, of finite but non-unitarily conceptual scenario universe, in whose synergetic totality, the a priori energy potential of both radiation and gravity are initially equal, but whose respective behavioral patterns are such that radiation's entropic redundant disintegratings is always less effective than gravity's non-redundant syntropic integrating. Radiation is plural and differentiable. Radiation is focusable.
Do you have that word, John?
Just my mind's overloaded. I just got to stop for a minute.
Yeah.
Now, where am I? That radiation's entropic redundant disintegratings is always less effective than gravity's non-redundant syntropic integrating. Radiation is plural and differentiable. Radiation is focusable, beamable, and self-sinusing. It is interceptable, separatist, and biasable. Ergo, has shadowed voids and vulnerabilities. Gravity is unit and undifferentiable. Gravity is comprehensive, inclusively embracing and permeative, is non-focusable and shadowless, and is omni-integrative, all of which characteristics of love. Love is metaphysical gravity. You, dear God, are the totally loving intellect, ever designing and ever daring to test, and thereby irrefutably proving to the uncompromising satisfaction of your own comprehensive and incisive knowledge of the absolute truth that your generalized principles adequately accommodate any and all special case developments, involvements, and side effects, wherefore your absolutely courageous, omni-rigorous and ruthless self-testing alone can and does absolutely guarantee total conservation of the integrity of eternally regenerative universe. Your eternally regenerative scenario universe is the minimum complex of totally intercomplementary, totally intertransforming, non-simultaneous, differently frequenced, and differently enduring feedback closures of a finite, but non-unitarily, non-simultaneously conceptual system in which naught is created and naught is lost, and all occurs in optimum efficiency. Total accountability and total feedback constitute the minimum and only perpetual motion system. Universe is the one and only eternally regenerative system. To accomplish your regenerative integrity, you give yourself the responsibility of eternal, absolutely continuous, tirelessly vigilant wisdom, whereby we have absolute faith and trust in you, and we worship you awe-inspiredly, all thankfully, rejoicingly, lovingly. Amen.
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 Wow.
Love is a metaphysical.
Yep. Wow. Thank you, Manu. Yep, that ties everything together. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, wow, is right.
Oh,
Yeah, wow, it's right. I haven't seen it.
Oh, John.
I'm going
What is
to
it?
drop
okay.
that link in the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you,
You-
John,
you-
for reading the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Steve,
as
you
well.
didn't see it. We read last time when we started the Australian call, Australia, New Zealand. It was the first
Mm.
that we read because we started with studying critical part.
This is interesting. And I left it off because I was first time seeing this page. Since 1927, whenever I'm going to sleep, I always concentrate my thinking on what I call ever rethinking the Lord's Prayer. So
Yep.
if he goes to sleep at night, he thinks these words. Wow, geez.
That is his own form of gratitude, and it's as long
Yeah.
as Becky can write.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Any other comments or questions? I-
Yes, I'm complete actually with this book. Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Very
remember. I gotta remember to end this book. I'm so glad you pursued that, and thank you for trusting yourself and just opening up the door, because the Lord's Prayer, his prayer, needs to be put at the end of this book.
Yes.
So powerful. Okay.
So, who's God?
You'd say what? Yeah, who is God? I'm God. You know,
I think God is Veritas.
It's what? Veritas?
Veritas. Well, I think it's each one of us. He's, you know, it's all human experience, which includes me, you know. So I'm a little piece of that.
So
Although
that's the only way to reconcile everything else. It is. God is true everywhere in pure principle.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, remember the three principle of the principle of thermodynamics, no? See if you remember the metaphor for them.
The metaphor for what?
no, I don't have that at my fingertips, Manu. I'm sorry.
Which one is
You
it?
can't win, you can't draw, you can't quit.
Oh,
Do you remember that?
I don't remember.
You can't win because you can't create energy. You cannot win. You cannot draw because of entropy. Your action always engenders a consequence, and that consequence is entropy. You can't quit because if you quit, you have reached 0 degree Kelvin, you die. So you're no more part of a game. And the game of life is life. No, the game of life is life. You understand? Universe is alive. Universe is not dead.
Right.
So the game of life is life. If you quit, if you die, you're something else. You're not in that game.
Mm.
And that game of life is in there between two metaphysics, between a dual metaphysical concept of the micro and the macro, the macro and the micro.
Right.
And we are in between in the game of life. Expanding, contracting, around, through, absorb, and all of those gimmicks. But macro will always be, micro will always be. And it's not attainable. It's only through life, aspirable. Look at it. If you die, your body, maggots are going to eat you and transform into nitrogen and some other stuff that is going to go and recycle into something else, another manifest.
Unless my friends eat me first.
And you will still be transformed.
It's what?
You will still be
And
transformed.
you'll still be transformed.
I'll still be transformed. I'd rather have my friends eat me than the maggots eat me. Of course, this is a reference to Stranger in a Strange Land. And Susan got that. It's about a Martian guy, a human being born on Mars. Robert Heinlein, classic book.
Right.
The word grok comes from that. Sometimes you hear people say, in order to grok this concept, that's a Martian word, G-R-O-K, grok, and it comes from the same book. So I just thought I would bring this up, and in the book it points out that that's what Jesus did. He sat with his disciples, his 12 at the Last Supper there, and said, "Here, eat this. This is my body." And the idea that what a sacrament that it was. So anyway, okay. Well, wow.
But my general comment is how current these books are, and they're only current because he tried to rely the most possible to general principle.
That's right.
Generalized principle that tend to be true. Our understanding is the same yesterday as today, or it was less yesterday but true today, but they are there. That's why it's so current. That's why when you read this thing is like today, because we still have the same question. What is the ordinance thinking, and how can we anticipate the future trajectory? Who knows?
Cool. Any other comments or questions on the book? Okay, so we've got like a half an hour we could take, or we can end the call. What about our future? What do we want to do in the future? You know, let me say this. Some of you guys know Richard Ramsey. He's been on a couple of these calls. I've been talking to him, and he and I are talking on Monday or Tuesday. I think I'm going to invite him to Wednesday's meeting. And he just gave a presentation on 52 Living, where he applied his Bucky principles to social work and psychology.
That'd be great.
And he has a whole presentation. I think he should take a couple of weeks, because I think we could really add to it. I noticed, I thought I could have added a couple of ideas to his presentation. Joe
Is
was
the same Richard who was on this call?
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard did what he could to contribute. And in fact, in his presentation on 52 Living, he even said, I attended another call and learned about precession. And he brought up the Soviet P. He didn't know the memory peg that I have. Soviet P. spin, O, orbit, V is vector, and then I for in and out, E for expansion and contraction, or what I like to call inspansion, and then T is torque and reverse torque. So Soviet, and then P stands for equanimity, and crap, I forgot the other E. I can find it here really quickly. But he said that he learned about precession, and he learned it on our call, and then he put that into his presentation. So I've been talking to him. He may be willing to come and present. That would be one thing we could do. But eventually we get to go to a book. What book do we want to do? How could we, or what topic would you like to see covered here to really integrate Bucky into what you're thinking about?
I have a question, because a number of you have read most of his books, yeah, and some of you have read all his books. And is there one that you want to delve in deeper with a group of people, or one that you have not done yet and would like, us to do it with you? Would that work? I don't know.
That's a good question, Ann. What do you guys say?
I think a natural follow-on. I don't know if you guys have done it, and if you have already, then the answer would be no. But I think Critical Path would actually be a very good follow-on to this book. I mean, depends on how you want to go through it.
Joe, it doesn't matter if you've done it already, because repetition leads to discovery. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and Bucky particularly,
honestly
Bucky is not often easy to understand the first or second time round.
Yeah. And I honestly believe with this group here, we actually get more done. We take longer to discuss a topic, but we go into it in a way that I understand it better. We don't just scoop over it and try to move on and get the agenda done. So I think Critical Path, reviewing Critical Path in this group, taking the time to really get it would be cool. I don't know what would be better, Synergetics or Critical Path, but if you're saying Critical Path, I'm ready to go for it. Why did you have Critical Path?
Don't go for synergetics.
What?
Don't go.
You want to go?
Don't do
No,
Synergetics.
don't. It's just too difficult.
Okay, good. And
And Critical Path was written to put those principles to the common person.
okay.
Right.
It only refers to the hard things when necessary. It's not, there's not much. It's written like a prose in poetry, for that matter.
Okay.
Like the grunge.
Oh.
Synergetics is really his geometry. And unless you want to, but my experience of it is discourages people from the call. People tend to quit the call when you start hitting those things.
Yeah.
I mean, John has been there quite a few times.
Yeah.
You put it up, it's not, in my opinion, it's not easy at all. Nothing is easy with Bucky, but that one is not.
No. I agree. I mean, there is nothing easy with Bucky, but I think that this is it's just a natural follow-on to this particular book. And I've only read parts of it, actually.
Yeah.
So going through and looking and digesting it with a group, I think would be a lot of fun.
Cool.
Do you know how many times people use the word precession? And they have not even understood, and they got discouraged just understanding the way Bucky explained it, because Bucky goes about taking practical example, like the discus straw, or like the gyroscope, to explain precession. But our brains can't do two structures at a time. We can't. We can hold how many ideas, Susan?
I think we're looking at an idea of 7 ideas.
Why do you think that is 7 ideas?
Well,
because six is a structure.
There you go.
And then the 7 is you relating to the structure.
There you go. So, and you had an answer for that. That's awesome.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
You can't go. But precession requires two structures. Everything else, when you say spinning, is spinning. When you say orbiting, is orbiting. It's one thing at a time. When you say talk, you can see the two, talk and cut the talk. When you say inspiring, expiring, you, expansion, as Steve would say, an expansion, you will see it, right? But when you talk about precession, you're talking about two things. And Joe will say the circular momentum,
Yeah.
linear momentum, interacting timelessly to produce an effect. It doesn't only take them to be there, but they need to interact at a very precise moment for you to have a precessive effect. There is no room for mistakes. That's why it's so difficult to even perceive what it is.
Yeah.
You need, for example, a discus thrower need to go into gyrations like this and building and building and building. And remember that it was precessive or it was teleological. You want to reach a point, right? When you do spinning, you're not spinning to reach a point. You spin until your energy is finished.
Mhm.
But in precession, you need to be teleological. And you know that you have two instruments that you have to use in sequence at a very precise time. Look at the level of complexity. Remember that complexity is 2 to the power of the degree. It starts with 2 to the power of 0, that is 1, 2 to the power of 1, that is 2, 2 to the power of 2, that is 4, and then 6, and then all of these things. You already talk about complexity to the power of 6 for a structure. Then you've taken it to 12, 13. It's complex. So the discus thrower, gyrate, when there is enough momentum and he knows where he wants to throw his discus, he releases it. And that goes into now, is build up circular momentum that translates now into linear momentum towards the objective. That's what ballistics do. That's what the rocket does when you want to spin off a satellite. You build enough and then you put the satellite into orbit. If you miss that time of releasing the satellite, even by, I don't know how much of a microsecond, the satellite is not going to be in orbit. It's not going to be stationary. No. It's going to fall back into gravity. So you have the moon that circumvents the Earth without ever being swallowed by the Earth. And the day that the Earth will stop going around the sun or gyrated itself, the moon will fall into the Earth.
Mm.
In pure principle. That's what precession is, and that's why it's so difficult. They used to say, Bucky used to call people and say, do you feel the tilt of the Earth? He used to say, but listen, look, listen. Do you feel that tilt? It's like a mechanics that, right? So most
Manu,
people, yeah.
I don't know how your brain works, but I'm glad it works the way it does.
Me too. I was just thinking the same thing.
Carry on, carry on.
I don't know. It's just, it's only that, you know, Susan and I and John probably have been 15 years into this thing. Reading and restarting and not understanding what Bucky, what the heck, what he said. I mean, we started these calls in like 2008, just about
2007, yeah.
yes, 2007, 2008,
Oh.
in different forms every week. And we read and then we don't understand. We don't understand. I don't understand. I'm just expressing to the best what I see. Somebody will have another experience of it, but that's what it is. It's purely veritas. It's pursuit I don't know where Bucky was. You should ask how much, was his brain functioning? Because it seems very abnormal.
Yes, it does.
Here's a little paper I
it-
did on precession from Synergetics for 400.654. And this is where the Soviet P comes in, and as a memory peg. But here is the key element of precession, is that precession is the effect of bodies in motion. All of these motions are happening simultaneously. So to understand one at a time is cool, but they're all happening simultaneously. And then precession is the effect of bodies in motion on other bodies in motion in
And the
interrelated.
relationship and the patterns. That's great.
Yeah.
You
So
didn't put one that is very important, Steve.
yeah,
In interrelationship patterns of other than 180 degrees.
Yeah.
Other than overlapping, completely overlapping. That's what it means.
Mm.
That in order highlight, in interrelationship patterns of other than 180 degrees.
yeah. Okay.
That is absolutely critical.
Yeah. So this is Synergetics. I'll drop this as a little paper I put together. I'll drop this in the things, but this quote Synergetics. I'll put it in the chat.
That's interesting because that's what exactly Richard was talking about the
It
other
was.
day.
Richard
I
goes,
mean, the idea.
yeah, he
yeah.
goes into the interrelationships in a big way.
Yes.
And he mentions the
That's the same.
formula n to square minus 1, right? N squared
Mhm.
minus 1, which is in cosmography. I wanted to bring up a thing. I don't think it was clear in cosmography and in synergetics. This is a tetrahedron right here. The dots are the 4 vertices in the tetrahedron. And then these loopy things are the relationships between the dots. So if you'll see here, there are 6 lines. This is a tetrahedron, but instead of showing the standard little, this guy right here, it's being represented as the 4 dots that you see here with the vectors, with the edges in between. Here's the 4 dots and there's the edges. And he points out the brain stores the experience inside the brain, these dots, but the intuition and mind operate outside the brain, and the interrelationships must be intuited. The intuition and mind interrelate, the brain stores the experience. ABCD is the experience, the interrelationships are 1, 2, 3. They have to be intuited and conceptualized by mind.
But let's take Steve.
Yeah.
Why is it that the brain stores?
Because we have neurons.
Why is it that it stores?
That's the nature of the brain, right?
Okay, why is the brain the brain? Okay, let me tell you what I think in the benefit of time. Every vertex that you see is the intersection of 2 or several lines of flow of energy.
Every vertice is the intersection of 2 or more lines of flow.
Okay.
2 or
Now,
more edges, 2 or more edges.
Yeah. Now a vertex is something.
Now what?
So when a vertex is something,
Yeah, it's an experience.
cipher like 0 is something. It's
Right.
something. So what you call story is the looping of energy flow at that intersection.
Yes.
It's like you come to a circle
Sure.
and you go around the circle.
Yeah.
You just go around the circle for a while before you exit.
Yeah.
Normally you come to a circle in the traffic, they say take first exit, take second exit, take third exit,
Yeah.
right? Or if you're taking the fourth exit, you are going back, in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Now remember one thing here. You came into a circle. First exit, second exit, third exit, and you are going in the opposite direction. What is that? You've done 360 degrees, but you are going opposite. Right? It means that you still have another 360 degrees to do before you fully go in the direction where you're going to.
Yep.
So this is another way of saying that the circle is 360 degrees, and in order to have a tetrahedron, a structure, you need 720 degrees. Do you see the metaphor?
A metaphor of what? Explain that metaphor.
Okay, I come to a circle. I'm an ant. Everything is a plane. And I go around, I'm in my car. That ant in my car. And at the circle, my GPS is telling me, Siri is telling me, take the first right. Take the first exit. That is 90 degrees. Take the second exit. That is 120 degrees, 180 degrees. Take the third exit. That's 270 degrees. 200 and, what is it? Yes, 270.
270.
Take the fourth exit. Is you are going back in your flow in the opposite direction you came in on my flat plate. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I was caught on a traffic circle this weekend. That's exactly what happened to me.
Okay, so that is 360 degrees. But your destination wasn't to exit the other way. Wherever you exit, you still need to go again because it's curved. Now it's no more flat. You still need to go another circle.
Right.
And that other circle say 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, 360 degrees, and you are back at your initial point. Now
it's kind of like a
yes.
mobile band. You start at the one, you go around on the top, and then you got to go around on the bottom.
That is the metaphor.
This is the wine dance. This is the wine dance.
Yes. Then you have described your structure.
Yeah.
Your tetrahedron. Your 720 degree definition of a tetrahedron.
Yeah.
Right? So I was just sharing that, these metaphors, the way I would try to understand it, to kind of solidify this thing. And that's why the brain stores. And my suggestion was that the brain stores because for a while, energy is going just in circle in the brain. That is the storage time, all right? At one point, the brain realized that it wasn't, or whether the mind realized that you were not meant to just go around the circle. You have to exit the circle. And you are exiting the circle in the flow, right? When I look from the top, do I see circles? I just see a road, right? The circle, I just see a flow. That pattern of going around just seemed to me like a flow of some energy. So that time that you spend going around the circle is local in the general flow of stuff. And it's stored in that structure that way. And it can be released because it has to be released, or it will be released, hopefully because you want it to be released towards something, towards your destination.
Cool.
Does it confuse you more, or does it make any sense?
I got parts of it. That makes me very happy.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I spent 5 minutes without being able to convey what I'm
No
thinking.
problem.
Well, cool.
Well, next time.
Cool. So we've kind of come to a consensus that we'll take Critical Path for our next reading, and I've got that book here, and I think I'm going to take it out of the book and put it in a Word document so we don't have these page breaks that we have to deal with every time. So I'll put each lesson in a Word doc, and that way it'll make it flow a little better. We won't have to worry about suddenly jumping on.
That'll be a lot of work. That'll be a lot of
Now,
work.
I just tested it out, and I just took Critical Path, which was right here, and I just grabbed this baby right there, and then I went over to here and I stuffed it in here. So now I've got to just make it a little bit readable, and I can do that, I think, very quickly with each lesson. It'll take me 15 minutes maybe, and I'll always be at least 5 pages ahead of where we are, so that if John wants to read really, really fast.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, and we don't want to question anything. I'll have enough pages in advance that we can go as fast as John's willing to read, and we're all willing to put up with it. So really good. And then Richard is we're gonna talk on Monday or Tuesday, and he'll come to the Wednesday. I think I'll invite him to the Wednesday meeting and give his presentation, and we can go from there, because he's using all of Bucky's principles in his social work and psychology training. So, and he's been a professor at a university, and he's been teaching kids and has a great experience. And he's been
That's
teaching.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm grateful for Joe for finding that link and sending it to me, because I missed that presentation. So thank you, Joe, very much.
No problem. It was a fantastic presentation. It really was. It was one of the ones that I was looking forward to the most, because you can actually see Bucky's principles applied in helping people on an everyday basis. And so I really think that, and yeah, his the concept of tensegrity, and really understanding that and how that works with our social interactions is, I think it's fantastic.
Cool.
You know what tensegrity means?
Well, it's a combination of
Compression and tension.
tension and integrity.
It's tensile integrity.
Yeah.
Radiation and gravity dancing in a way that is beautiful.
And that's one of the things that Richard goes through in his presentation. So we can have a great discussion with him on him. And I think we can give him some pointers, because I think he has a really good practical grip on it. And just like John and Yoshi did with their tetramap thing, made such a powerful application of it. It's just a metaphor anyway, and any way to apply that metaphor in a way that's helpful to people has got to be wonderful. Okay, so that's our agenda. Any other comments or questions? Good. So Joe, how are you feeling tonight, and what are you taking away from tonight?
I'm feeling lucky. I really am, for being here and having gone through Grunch of the Giants. I mean, and I'm thankful for everybody's contributions over the past few weeks. You know, this is a book that, as I've mentioned, I think it's something that you have to really go through again. I think it provides a historical context as to where we are economically, and even just the way we're functioning today. And what I started to see through this book, little by little, was how to apply some of Bucky's higher level concepts to economics, and how to start to think about things differently when it comes to systems and economics as well. That's we tend to look at traditional indicators and numbers as a way of kind of telling a story about how the economy works or should work. And I think that what Bucky is telling us how it actually does work and how it could work if we use our imaginations a little bit differently. And I think that that's sometimes, I think sometimes it's interesting because in just discussing how we talk about exponential growth, and we've talked about that on the Wednesday calls, and how, we look at progress in terms of numbers and gross domestic product, things along those lines. And it really is a lack of imagination if you only look at it in those terms. It's a very narrow way of looking at the world. And what the book provides us with is as to why we have that narrow view of the world. And, the historical aspects of this, the taking of land, and the way money is used and the way money is circulated through the system. And we are right now just financing finance. We're not actually doing anything productive. So I think all of these concepts, this is what Bucky's actually telling us. And that's what I was taking away from the Grunch of the Giants. Now I need to go back through it and really think through these concepts as to, again, start to apply Bucky's concepts, but also just to use my imagination a little bit outside of what we traditionally do when we're applying, when we're looking at the global economy. So I think I feel extremely fortunate to have gone through this book with everyone. And there was a couple times that you talked about this, the importance of education in this process. And that was absolutely critical for us as well. And we're going through interesting economic times now. And I think that it's going to take some systemic thinking and imagination in order to kind of move forward. I don't think we can actually continue down the path that we're moving. And I think actually Manu has given us models, even in a way, talking about that when we look at things as just exponential growth on a finite planet. So I think that this is again, these are all things that at a high level I'm just taking in, and now it's time to go back through and apply them. And so I think Critical Path will actually allow us to do that. And so I feel very, very lucky to have gone through this and just come out with more questions than answers. And that's always a lot of fun. So thank you everyone for your time. And I look forward to the next adventure. So with that, Manu, how are you doing? And what did you take away from there? It's two, or should I? How you doing? I don't know if I should go to somebody else first. It looked like I caught you off guard.
I'm really appreciative, Joe, and I'm grateful. I appreciate it. I appreciate the friendship, and I appreciate the openness of everybody. Everybody is taking risks here, just to be coming candidly and totally into the discussion that we're having and telling what they feel and what they think. That in itself is something that is that's rarer in this world today. So it's a testimony that we are first and foremost a group of friends and siblings. Let's put it this way. The second thing that I'm really grateful to Bucky to have left this, because these books that we're reading, they were all written or compiled in the last years of his life, between 1979 or 1978 and 1983. So he spent a lot of time accumulating data, identifying patterns, understanding and comprehending what was going on. And it just felt like it was urgent, as he always said, at the nick of time of his life, to leave this testimony of his witnesses, his witnessing of the marvels of those of God in action, really, those generalized principles in action. And most powerfully, it is that we can learn a little bit about them and try our best to apply them. And I will always say locally, to influence in a way that makes sense in terms of being in sync with those cycles, being a fractal of those cycles. And that the obligation that we have at minimum is to think of two as one. Duality. That if you're doing something, you should always think at minimum at the consequences of what you're doing, not the bottom line of what you are seeing now. Because what the reaction will come with a lag, isn't it? Depending on how far and how meandrous your energy, the energy impulse that you put goes, it will come with a lag. And if you are not patient and you are not actually seeking to understand and to project what it could be, you are bound to get astray. Your Steve, kind of adjustment all the time will not be there because we won't have any reference to do it. And it's very, very important to me that we understand that there are cycles, and there are cycles of different durations. And the lag is a time that a cycle comes to feed back into us in terms of information. And that is at least 720 degrees. So that is important to me. And it's also interesting that Bucky cites actually 3 books. It says Synergetics. It says the Grunch, no, Critical Path and the Grunch.
He said Synergetics 2 also.
Yes, I mean, when I say Synergetics, is 1 and 2. Critical Path and the Grunch. The Grunch is visionary. Critical Path is really what it is. For the layperson, the north and boss of how this is and how you should do. Synergetics is understanding the language of it, the mathematics, the geometry behind it. And inside those 3 books, and I'm quite happy that we go over and over those 3 books, because every time you come, it's a new it's information that you get, and the better you will be if you can still be awake. And otherwise, I'm again thankful, and I wish every and each of us a very productive and very joyful and very experienceable week ahead. So this says, Susan, how do you feel? What do you take away?
I feel grateful that there's other people who find similar value. And I think what I got, the optimistic final note, when we were talking about Bucky's, last sentence there, Anne, that you wanted to dive into. When we started, I know it's at the start of Critical Path, and I think it's also at the start of Grunch of Giants, that Bucky's talking about the interrelationship between human beings and the concept of the priests and the kings being used to subjugate the rest of the individuals. And if we understand that we are holofractal units of the divine ourselves, and we get to that namaste moment where we see the divinity in each and every other person, we no longer have any need for priests. And I think what you see happening in our society right now, if I'm going to be hopeful about it, without being disrespectful to religions at all, is I think that humanity as a group, the ones that are spiritual, I think don't believe that they need to pay homage to some other human to be an intercession. I think the idea and the experience of having direct spirituality is much more common. And if we get to the point that we can see as individuals that we don't need priests, possibly we can get to the moment where we don't need kings either. And how do you feel and what are you taking away?
Thank you, Susan. Well, that's also another wow moment, what you just shared, right? It's like, yes, in a nutshell, that's what that is all about, you know? And when you look at it, it's so simple in its complexity, yeah, to even to even put into words exactly what the solution is. Yeah, so thank you very much, Susan. Okay, now actually, I really thank every single one of you, right? Steve, John, Joe, Manu, Susan, and I also today it's just I'm just so grateful that in September of 2021, I just made that decision to connect back with Kelly. So I wrote him a message, and it was so quick when he came back, and immediately he asked. I hadn't been in touch with him for a bit, yeah, prior to that, and immediately on that, the message coming back from him was an invitation to join this group. Okay, so it's been 1.5 years, and there is so much that I thank Kelly for that, because this is where we're gonna be doing something for the future in our own corners of the world, yeah. And so I'm gonna do a message to Kelly. I haven't contacted him in a while. I really need to thank him personally for this. And now one more thing is that today's meeting, our meets today, you know, because every one of you brings something of Bucky. Like, yeah, we're looking at details, but you bring the bigger picture of what Bucky talks about. Every one of you do that at just different moments, you know. So today, as we were talking about that money and wealth, and the whole idea of universal wealth came up again, and you know, and Steve went on to talk about Richard Ramsay, was it? Is that his name? Yeah, talking about 52 living based on Bucky's philosophy on living and all that. You know, let me go and percolate a little bit on this one, on how to do this co-op that I have with this whole idea of universal wealth, you know, and the whole idea of living. I don't know, maybe I'll come back to y'all when I take this a little further, or even to get the crux of it moving. And do rethink. Anyway, I'm gonna sit and think about this one. Yeah. So again, thank you very, very much. So John, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway?
And I'm grateful to have been part of today. My head still hurts. Wrapping my head around Bucky sometimes hurts, but I'm still glad that I did it, because I really was glad to think again about the nature of God and his definition of God and his interpretation of the Lord's Prayer. It's constant food for thought. To say the brain just gets a little crowded. And so very pleased to have been here, very pleased to have been part of it. Glad we've gone through the Grunch of Giants together. And yeah, just looking forward to going back to Critical Path again. So who hasn't gone? Only you, Steve?
Yeah, I think it's me.
So Steve, how do you feel? What do you take out of today? Just excuse me for 1 sec, would you?
Please. Well, John is taking care of the cat or whatever he's doing. I redid the pre-session handout. And so you see in the chat version 7, so delete 6, okay? Because I realized that precession is all of those other things. It's the Soviet, and then P stands for precession. So Soviet P, and precession is all of that happening all at once. Bodies in motion on other bodies in motion. And so I added bin on it. So Soviet P bin. I don't know if that's too complicated, but I like words like that. And if they're fun and stupid, they're easy to remember. That's what I do. So I'm grateful for that. I put that out there. Also, I wanted to throw out that when the call opened up tonight, um, um, as Manu was waking up, he muttered about a James Brown tune. I feel the grunts, and so I'm putting that in the chat right now too, because I think everybody needs to hear a little James Brown. I've been waiting till the end of this to put that in there because I thought it was really cool. Now, really seriously, I'm totally amazed at you guys on this call. I mean, I really don't know anything about this. I'm learning as I go, and each of you shares something so wonderful.
Vision problems. Try this simple ice hack with water before bed. Every human.
Is that me?
I clicked on the link.
I don't think you clicked on a link I sent
Just
you.
tried to copy it and it clicked on. I was trying to copy the link.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you got
Then what you do is just to go down where you have
gotta,
it.
yeah. Wait till the ad gets
You just
then-
click and save the chat.
Yeah, then listen to James Brown after the ad goes on. So you guys add so much to this. I love the way you guys are really willing to pause and look at it and not miss anything. It's really cool. I'm excited that Anne's here with her educational stuff, which is so what Bucky was into. I'm really amazed at Susan's idea here about, tackling this idea here, Bucky tackling this idea of God and the idea of having an admiral or a priest or a king or somebody who's running everything, and really it's up to you and me and this personal pipeline thing. That is so powerful. I've always believed that since I was 14. I believed that. I read it in a book, and I'm amazed that Bucky's saying the same thing. When I was 14, let's see, 46, 14, 10, 56, be 1960. So I read it a little bit before Bucky wrote those books. So that's really cool. One of the things that Joe's summary was so powerful. I wish I would have been smart enough to think that. Thank you, Joe, for bringing that all together. And this concept of regenerative and what Manu brought up about cycles, because if I can say, well, what is regenerative? But if I know cycles, I get the foundation of regenerative. It's about a cycle. I can't, if I'm going to solve a problem, I want to solve the problem in the context of a cycle. And when I do that, I'm more likely to be regenerative than if I'm not. So I was really grateful for the idea of cycles, for you mentioning that a couple times. And I think that's all of my notes and my takeaway. I'm really delighted that I'm gonna be talking with Richard. He'll probably, we'll talk about on Wednesday, but it's like if he can, he'll present on Saturday night, maybe if he can, or sometime soon. If not, we're gonna start with Critical Path, and I'm so excited. I've already started pasting it together so that we don't have to contend with those page breaks that are so nasty in a PDF. And that'll be cool. So I'm grateful for each one of you and for the contributions that you're making in my life. And looking forward to next week. See you
Thank
then.
you, everyone.
Thank you. And Joe, thank you for missing your meeting here. And because you're down there.
No worries.
Yeah.
It's
Very cool.
I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Boy,
Just all
we're
have
so
on
glad you
collared
made it.
shirts. It's kind of formal.
Yeah. Next thing you know, I'll have a tie on.
Well, Steve from a jam session.
You say you're going to Thailand?
No, I said I'm gonna have a tie on.
A tie. Okay.
Yeah. I do plan on going to Thailand at some point in my life.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, all. See you soon.
Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.